My name is Ken Rucci. I am a technology specialist in security and compliance on the account team. And my job is to really talk about our solutions and how they can fit into what your security strategies are, or just to give you, give you the ability to stay up to date on everything that's happening with Microsoft. Because I've been at Microsoft 12 years, and the last couple of years have just kind of been a race of all of the things that we've done to enable security, not only for our customers, but for ourselves. And I think this is a great opportunity, as Tony mentioned, to talk about how you can leverage some of these solutions to be able to not only protect your devices, but also to protect the cloud application infrastructure that all of our clients are have these days. So one of the things that we want to talk about is how you can tie all of this together and how this fits into the Microsoft strategy. So um, our security stack is made up of really four different pillars. One, identity and access management, and that all centers around zero trust. Right? This is kind of one of the things that Microsoft has adopted as we've really changed the way that we access our applications, the ways our users interact with our information. We just have to take a different approach, and that zero trust gives us the ability to, just basically check everybody every time they they want to access something. And then from a threat perspective, right? The attacks are coming in stronger, faster. We just have to have new ways to protect against them, and we'll talk about some of those today. And then also, especially with things from a from a COVID standpoint, we have our customers have our employees working all different situations. Right, no one's coming in the morning, logging into a domain connected computer, and then just kind of leaving it for. They have multiple devices and networks that they're coming in. So accessing your data and protecting that data is kind of risen to the forefront for a lot of our customers. And then and the last pillar is security management. Just how do we manage all of this information? We have multiple devices producing logs and alerts from all over, the security stack. And one of the things that we can do, and we probably won't get into a lot of it today, is just talk about how we can kind of aggregate that information into one place and really start to get meaningful information from all of your security devices. So what I want to talk about now um, is how can we start to access this information. And one of the things that we do is through cloud app security, right? That's one of the products that we'll talk about first. And what cloud app security does is really gives you a different approach to how we look at our applications, our data. And I mentioned some of this before, that there are so many different cloud applications out there. The big ones like Office 365, Google, and Amazon. But there are all these other applications that your IT customers are probably using. And how do we begin to bring that together and put some structure around those applications, and what data and information is being distributed across? So let's take a look at that, right? So when we talk about cloud app security, and I'll just use the word CASB because that's kind of for the easier way to say it, and that's kind of what people are saying as well. So when we look at CASB, let's look at a couple of the most important use cases. One of the first one is, we have all these applications: Box, Office, Azure, Salesforce, you name it, customers are using them. And one of the things that we would like to do is we want to get an inventory of what applications are being used, and also importantly, how much data is going through those applications. So, we call this shadow IT, right? We can put in place policies that say we only want you to store information in OneDrive for Business or Box, but we don't have a way to enforce that. So we can create this concept of sanctioned applications. And the first way we do that is doing an inventory of what's out there. and determine what we don't want to have sanctioned, right? I need to know what I don't know first, kind of concept. So then once we know, and this is an application, this is a function that's part of Cloud App Security. You can run this, get your inventory, and then I can say, here are the applications that I want our customers, our end users to use, and here's how I want them to use it. We can actually put policies in place that look to what type of information is it classified. We can look to see what are the users doing through session controls, and we can monitor all of those applications and enforce them. And then we can also tie this in with our threat protection stack, and we can start to look for malware, suspicious activities, anomalous logins, all of these other things that are happening. Right? We can do this with our own Office 365, applications, but now with Cloud App Security, we can extend this outside, so you can enable that same protection to basically the non-Office 365 environment. So there's a couple of ways that we won't really get into it today, but how do you set up off the Cloud App Security Broker? There's a couple different ways that we can connect. I'm happy to arrange a follow-up conversation. You can work through Tony or Kevin, and we can talk about how this works. But really today, I just want to talk about how we can apply this to our topics that we wanted to talk about today. So from a shadow IT perspective, we really look at this circle, right? We have to discover what the applications are, because once we know what those applications are, then we can start to look at, are there some risks to using those, right? Are these applications compliant with HIPAA, with SOX, any of the other out there? That's one of the things that we do with Cloud App Security, is we actually have built-in reporting on, I think it's over 70 different controls, and I'll show you that as we go through. Of is this a FIPA, FERPA approved application, and then we can start to look at how are people using this, right? What type of data is going there? Do we want that data to go there? And once we have that, we can actually start to put some policies and start to monitor that and say, okay, here's how we want people to use this. I want them to, be able to put sensitive information there, but I don't want them to download it. They can only access it in the application. So we can do all of those things, but the first part of this is really just understanding what applications are out there and they're using. So we'll go through that phase. Once we have that, this is what that inventory looks like. So from this screenshot, I can see we've identified 305 applications with some unique IP addresses, how many users, and importantly, how much information is being kind of traversed across that application. And then down in the left-hand middle, you'll start to see those applications. So I can see Google Drive, OneDrive, and then we start to see these applications towards the bottom: SugarSync, Facebook. So these are all applications that we were able to discover by just monitoring the traffic across the network. And then once we have this, then we can start to look at where not only the type of data, but what are the users that are using those? Should they be accessing these applications? Once we start to look at this, we can start forming our almost our policies of who we want to access this application, where do we want them to go, and then we can look and say, okay, I want to be able to evaluate these applications. And this is what I was talking about before, this automatic assessment of the apps. And we can rate the applications from 1 to 10, and that's based on what type of controls they have in place. But we can also integrate with our other products. And in this screen, we're not only showing the applications that we've discovered, but also how many machines are accessing them. And we're pulling this information from Microsoft Defender for Endpoints, which was formerly known as Windows Defender, Microsoft Windows Defender ATP. As Tony mentioned, we've gone through some name changes to kind of be more consistent with what all of these products are doing. So in this case, we're seeing that we have roughly 1,100 machines that are accessing OneDrive for Business. We have 178 that are down here that are accessing this application, which was rated 6 by BitToken. So now that we even start to look further into that traffic and what's happening and where this information is going. So once we have this, then we can start to look at applications that are Oauth applications, right? These are applications that are getting more information from the users by pulling in additional profile information, or they require some elevated permissions. All of that may be, well and good and needed, but in some cases, I may say, well, I don't really feel comfortable letting these applications, get this, this more deeper look into what our users are doing or authentications. So this is another way we can look at, once we have that inventory, what applications require that advanced privilege. We have the ability to detail that out, look at how many users are using it, and the way that we turn this on is really just built-in integration. Right, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, it's just one click. And Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, if you're not familiar with it, is our endpoint solution that looks to see what applications are running, what DLLs, what executables are running on a machine. It also has automated remediation, threat and vulnerability management. All of that is part of that. And we can integrate with Cloud App Security by just turning it on. Right, so it's not another agent, it's not another machine that runs or something else I have to update it. It's just one click. So we have that integration pre-built into our security solutions, which is a big help for a lot of our customers. So here is that application view. We can see them not only by the machines, but what type of categories, what are the risk levels. We can, I'm happy to follow up with a deeper dive, but once we have this inventory, we can start to look and see what is our security posture across all of these different applications and where are our users going. In this case, we can actually say, okay, I'm looking at our inventory and I can see I have some of these applications that are called Oxygen Cloud. It's rated a number 4. It's not really anything that we as a business have any appropriate use cases for using it. So we want to actually block that. And this Dolly drive, another 4. If I wanted to see the individual controls, how we rate it, that's also possible. But here I can see I have over 200 machines that are accessing both of these applications. It's not really what we would consider a business application. So I want to go ahead and sanction that application. So what I can do is look into why do we want to sanction it, right? As I said before, we do this automatic evaluation for these applications. And here's an application called Mega. And this is what that looks like. All of these individual security controls or criteria that we look at, we're updating on a regular basis. So this application, Mega, for example, doesn't have IP address skipped. Also, the other FINRA, different types of compliance. So you can use this to automatically sanction or block applications. And here we can also say, here's what we want to do. You do have some control over how you want this to look. This is all part of Cloud App Security, as part of the customization for the inventory. And then here I can start to look at what applications. You have this really flexible filtering tool that you can use. I can see what applications are sanctioned, what's in review. You can kind of choose and pick how you want to view all this information. It's all part of the application. So here I want to take a look at these Oauth applications again. That's something that you really want to pay attention to. So here I can see a couple of applications that are being used. We have the ability to sanction each one of them as well, just like a regular application. If I wanted to go here and see what which one of these are being used by only a few people. And we call that rare, rare with high permissions. So I can see here, there's a couple of applications that are used by only one or two users. Why is that? Maybe that's something that we want to look at, especially when we're concerned about the permission level, and again, that information that these applications can use. So here's an example of this Wunderlist app. In here, we can see here the permissions that are elevated as it can sign in and read the user profile. We don't necessarily want that, especially if they're doing this from, say their business profiles that they're logging in. So what we can do is just click on ban, right? So this is how we can create those sanctioned applications or control what applications our users are getting to. So I can just click on it. I can put a customized message in here, and then I can just go ahead and click ban app, and it'll automatically be updated. So when a user tries to go to that application, right, they'll see that it's blocked. So they'll know that it's not an error. We're telling them that they can see that this is blocked by our security policy. We have a lot of control over this through what's called conditional access. And conditional access is our way to create policies that can get very deep into what you can do. I can allow certain actions to take place inside of those applications, like block printing, copy and paste, what type of data is being uploaded or downloaded. I can now start to build all of these different policies based on, context aware, because we can look into the session and see what the user's doing, and that's part of what Cloud App Security can do. So this is kind of, real quick of what conditional access is. We have the ability to look at different platforms, different applications, even how are they accessing the information. And then I can say, okay, based on that, let's pull in this information that from our, the integrated platform, right? Microsoft Security sits on top of what we call the intelligent security graph, which pulls in information about all of the applications that are running, things like Xbox, Office 365, Azure AD. So we're getting this continually updated information, and we can use that as part of our decision on saying, should I allow a user to access this application or not? So we can then determine a session risk and say, you know what, Ken's never really logged in from here. So I'm going to set his session list, risk to high or okay, based on this real-time information. And then from there, we can say, what do I want to do? Do I want to allow him to do it? But maybe he's got to, do MFA to get in, just because I want an extra level of security, or just block or allow him. And then we can do that based on what application. So I can say, maybe he can go to SharePoint, but he can't download anything, or he can't, forward anything from that he accesses within, Google or anything like that. So you can create different policies based on all of these different conditions. So it's not just a static decision that's made. Conditional access gives you the ability to do all of this. So once we sanction those applications, we can then start to govern or restrict what users do inside of those. So we actually have this set up so that we can integrate. If you're using another SIEM, you can send that out through our API. We can tie this in with our DLP solution. I talked a little bit about that with conditional access of how we want to set that up. And then we also have the ability to, if you wanted to get into some advanced workflow, we have a product that's Microsoft Flow that'll allow you to do that. So that is the conditional access or the sanctioned application piece that we wanted to cover first, and that's giving you the ability to regulate where the users are going and what they're doing. But now if we want to go back down the stack a little bit and get down to the device, we can talk about Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. And as I mentioned, that is our device centric solution that does vulnerability management. It does some device hardening. does EDR, and we also added into that auto investigation. So if something happens on the machine, we can go ahead and then start to take a look at it. So from a device perspective, one of the things that Defender for Endpoint does is threat and vulnerability management, right? So a lot of our customers are using things like Nessus and LandGuard or other tools to find out, what's running on the machine. Well, this is built into Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, and Microsoft Defender for Endpoint is built into Windows 10. So there's nothing to install. There's not another agent that needs to be managed or updated. This is all just part of the operating system, and we just, through licensing, just turn it on. So then it can run and give you that threat and vulnerability view. What applications are installed, what patches need to be applied, and it also can evaluate our security posture. So I can give you an exposure score, right, or a configuration score, and say, here's what you need to do to up your score. A lot of our customers like that because it gives them kind of a starting place. Like they say to Microsoft, we installed this, but what do I do next, or how do I manage all this? So we can do all of that through threat and vulnerability management as feature there. The other thing is we can do attack surface reduction, and this is Microsoft specific guidance that we can use to harden the operating system.
Hey,
And this is
up there, go.
what
we were just wondering if your slides were frozen, but I just noticed it advanced. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, okay. Oh, no problem. So attack surface reduction is configuration guidance from Microsoft on what kind of rules to turn on, what settings should you customize, and that makes it much harder for the attackers to modify executables or get into system files. All of these things are part of Defender for Endpoint. That you can use this ASR functionality. Again, it's the ability to harden your devices and set all this information up. This is what we can do, right? These ASR rules are pretty complex, but they're all built in. So I can use them to turn on or turn off based on what I want to do. Again, gives you the ability to make you more secure against threats, enable some protection from applications, and all these rules are just something you can turn, you can build into the policy and push across your network. The other thing that we can do is this sits on top of Windows Defender. So a lot of our customers are using Defender as the malware engine that's included in Windows, and this enables that to give when the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint kind of sits on top of that and adds this behavior-based protection, and we're constantly looking at new threats that are identified in the cloud, and we can block, we can stop files from executing, we can kick off investigations. All of this gives you this what we call the next generation protection. So Windows Defender itself does all the block and tackling, the malware checking, the known threats, but from a more kind of a next 0-day perspective, we can look at all this with Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. And this is how this all ties together, right? We have components that run on the client that are, because it operates fast, right, running locally. So we can do the memory scanning, we can do, apply ML, machine learning modules. But then once we detect something that we haven't seen, we have this ability to reach up into the cloud and upload a sample to the cloud to run a quick machine learning algorithm to scan it. And if we determine that it's malicious, we can go ahead and block it right from the client. And the advantage to that is we can let everyone else know. So by running in the cloud and using this intelligent security graph, everybody benefits from this. So you're sharing that intelligence across. So it makes it really powerful for our customers to be more secure. So as I mentioned, we have this behavior blocking, and we call this block at first sight, right? So because we have this ability to look at everything, and we keep all this information up in the cloud, every time Microsoft Defender for Endpoint generates or notices a file, begin execution, we can look to see, okay, is this malicious? If we don't know what that file is, we haven't seen it before, and not just locally at your machine, but I mean, we're talking across the Microsoft stack, we can actually pause that execution. We can upload a file to the cloud, check it, to render a verdict in milliseconds, and then we can say, okay, block it at that machine. So this is based on not only have we seen the file, but also looking at what the behavior is. What is this file trying to do? Is it doing something like looking for credentials that doesn't make sense? We can actually go ahead and block it based on that. So we can also kick off an investigation as well, right? So we have security runbooks that are built into the product. So we can say, if we see this, right? If someone opens up a new file, or we determine that there's been a new alert post post investigation, we can go back and kick all of that into an investigation. Look to see, have there been any other people that have been impacted by that, or we can even just allow them to just do some what we call advanced hunting, where because we're storing all this information up in the cloud, we keep about 6 months worth of data, depending on what you set up initially. So you can go back and see whether any other files that had this hashed and any other users access this information. All that is available to you as part of the advanced hunting.
Hey, Ken, we do have a question from John Kraft. He's asking, what if the endpoint cannot communicate with the cloud threat intelligence?
So all the activity will run on the client, and we'll just sync back up with Office 365 or Microsoft 365 when they reconnect. So everything will still operate when it's running. I mean, if it's offline. Is that the question?
Yeah, I generally I just wanted to understand how that would work. I mean, is it a default deny, or does it fail open or fail closed essentially?
It's not really fail open or fail closed, because all of that information still runs locally. So we're still checking files. We're still doing all of that analysis, even though we're offline. So if the machine goes off goes offline for a period of time, we're still going to provide that scanning. We'll just hold everything. But if we have to say default block, we would block things out of caution, because we can't check it with the cloud.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a tremendous amount of information out there from a threat intelligence perspective, and I wouldn't think that you would have all of that information cached on all of the endpoints. So, okay, but you can set it to default block.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's different ways that we can configure that if it's not connected. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, sorry, Tay, I don't have the screen up. Were there any other questions or
that's all that's in there right now.
Okay. So yeah, so as we just talked about, there is a lot of information that we keep as part of this, not only from the alerts, but also from the deep down into what's happening. So if we look at some of these alerts, I can see not only kind of how we tie it to the MITRE categories, but we can see timelines. We can see what entities were affected by this. And then one of the things that we do is we have this concept of what we call incidents. So because there's so many security tools that are running and they're generating alerts, that a lot of our customers have said, I just don't know how to keep up with all of the alerts. What we do with Defender Endpoint is we actually aggregate these alerts and we group them into incidents. So incidents gives you the ability to look to see, okay, here is 25 alerts that we're putting into one incident, because it's all related to the same malware, the same user or machine or conditions. So I can look at this much easier than trying to, kind of just parse through the logs looking for everything that has the same, IP address. So that incidence is really powerful for our customers, especially from a security operations teams, to be able to look and to see what's happening. This advanced hunting, as I mentioned before, is this very granular, deep dive view into what's happening in your environment. So, and it runs through PowerShell, and we have a lot of these advanced hunting queries that are already built, that you can repurpose. This is based on the Custo Query Language, or KQL, very much like SQL, and you can build these queries and then run them and then look for certain things. So maybe I want to be proactive and I want to start to look for, anybody that executed PowerShell from their client, right? That's not necessarily a bad thing, but maybe I want to look and see, why are end users running PowerShell, right? So we can look to see, who kicked off the PowerShell environment. Just one example of, hundreds of different ways that you could look at this, but this is, and then this gives you that insight. And again, we store this information up in the cloud, so it's not like I have to worry about after 30 days this goes away. It's all based on what you set your storage retention to, and 90% of our customers say 6 months because it's up in the cloud, it doesn't cost anything extra. You keep all of this information there. The other thing that we have is what's called live response, and this is really powerful because when I'm looking at what's happening to an endpoint and we're monitoring all of the things that happen, what files are being accessed, who's logging in, what executables are being run. If for some reason this machine becomes patient zero, or there's some kind of threat that's going on that machine, we've now added a feature called live response that gives you the ability to connect to that machine via a command line interface, and I can go and run files or run commands on that machine. Again, this is secured, so I can isolate the machine from the network if I determine something is going on with that machine from Defender Endpoint, but then I can also now log into that machine and take any kind of remediation or pull files off. This is something we added last year. A lot of our customers weren't really aware that we had this, but it is from a security operations standpoint something that they really want to take advantage of, because it is that, kind of that next phase of, okay, it's great, I've identified the machine, I've isolated from the network, but now what do I do? How can I get that file off, or look to see what services are running, et cetera? All of that information is there. So that's live response. And then that just, I know this was a quick flyby of, cloud app security and also Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, but I wanted to make sure that, we wrapped up in time to see if anybody had any questions, or happy to kind of go back and talk about some of the things that I covered. As I mentioned, if you want a deeper dive into this, or how this would fit in with what you're doing, please reach out to Tony or Kevin, and I'm happy to schedule another conversation with a deeper demo, or talk about different features that we might have covered today. But so hopefully you found this useful, and I'll turn it back over to Tony.
Okay, yeah, great. Thanks, Ken. So I see a question from Ryan. Do you offer any services to help customers get set up, configured? Yes, the fast track benefit will provide resources to help you get started with the service. So we got a question from James. Can CAS also determine if the information on users OneDrive and decide if the information is classified or personal, or is it only with apps?
If the applications if the classifications are provided, yes, CAS can look into those as well. OneDrive is one of those locations that's native to Office 365. So yes, we can apply policy based on the classification in OneDrive.
Another question from Ryan. With live response, we've tried playing with it some and it wouldn't connect. Any common issues that would cause that?
That usually comes down to a network setting. If the machine is already onboarded into Office 3 or off. Man, I'm still stumbling over the new names. Defender for Endpoint, then there shouldn't be any issues. The only thing that I've seen customers is just I'd have is just that there's a couple of network ports and things that have to be configured, but shouldn't have any problem with it, I guess is what I'm saying. Especially if the machine is onboarded already. I want to just open up a support issue and just they can help check for that.
Perfect. Okay, good. So Ryan says good. Any other questions or comments?
Can I jump in really quick?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Since CASB was brought up, we actually use both Cloud App Security and Defender for Endpoint. One of the things we've been talking about turning on, which is not turned on by default, is in Cloud App Security under Settings, there's a file monitoring option, which also goes with a malware alert that's disabled by default. Is there any downside to turning on that file monitoring in Cloud App Security?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head. I mean, it's just the monitoring piece. There's no action that's going to be taken.
So, I mean, I guess the concern was on our end because we also have, I'm assuming the name's going to change, but Office 365 ATP. And I believe there's a setting where it can scan and analyze files and Teams, SharePoint, so forth. And we were told at the time that could slow down, I guess, uploading files, downloading files, what have you, regarding that particular software option. So I guess the concern was if we turn on file monitoring and Cloud App Security, would our users notice anything wrong in terms of increase times for working with files?
I wasn't, to be honest with you, I wasn't aware that was a concern. So, I mean, I don't know if that was given to you. I mean, but it could possibly be, right? I mean, I'm on the pre-sale side. But yeah, we have a lot of customers that are using that Microsoft Defender for Office, formerly known as Office 365 ATP, for that file scan. And I don't see how that could the file monitoring, but if that's guidance that you got from us, might want to just revisit that again. Were you working with support or Premier or somebody? Was that Fast Track?
I think it was through a recommended vendor. It wasn't Microsoft directly. Okay,
yeah, I'm not aware of that, but I'm not saying that there wasn't some.
They just brought it up as a concern. No,
okay.
They said that it used to be a little bit slower, and now over time it's gotten to the point where it's fairly negligible. But okay, it's something that to keep in mind. And I was just, and that's through Office ATP. We wanted to turn on the file monitoring and Cloud App Security, but that same concern came up when it came to Cloud App Security. So, but I couldn't find a whole lot of documentation regarding the file monitoring and Cloud App Security going through like tech docs or anything like that. So that's why I figured I'd bring it up.
Yeah, I mean, I can take a look if I find anything. I'll make sure Tony or Kevin has your contact information. But yeah, that would be new to me, honestly.
Okay, appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, well, great. Well, thanks everyone for joining today, and I'll take the recording, post it up to our website, and we'll talk to you next month. Have a good day.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.